Welcome back. Yet again, we zoom into the issue of our nation's security. But one of the major focus on today's program, besides the other issues, is this launch against medical doctor or doctors, health practitioners, health professionals, where we see incidents of them being kidnapped. And we're going to talk about that as well as other security issues. So let's bring in our guest, Dr. Edine Osoro is a security and management consultant, fellow, the Security Institute United Kingdom, and founding MDC of Executive Guards Limited. He joins us via Zoom. Dr. Osoro, thank you so much for coming on the program. We also have joining us from our Abuja studio, a retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Mr. Wilson Inalegu, and also the President, Association of Resident Doctors, University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, Dr. Abba Innocent. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having us, or having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, viewers across the globe.
All right, Dr. Innocent, let's start with you, because this is quite one of the reasons why we're having the conversation. The issue around what you call perhaps a bit of a prevalence, if you allow me to use that word, of medical doctors being targeted. So I will start with some data with you. What has been, let's talk about this year, for instance. How many medical doctors have been kidnapped and maybe released? How many attacks on medical doctors has been recorded?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. The exact figure of medical personnel, particularly doctors that have been kidnapped for this year, has been very alarming. There hasn't been any particular figure because, again, reporting has been an issue. A lot of people will actually prefer to keep it on the low. So reporting has been an issue, but data available to us, especially in our Abuja Nigerian Medical Association, this year alone we've had over 17 cases of kidnapping all across Nigeria, which is very alarming.
All right, Dr. Innocent, if I may butt in just for a moment, I want to get a few things sorted. Let's get to Dr. Osoro on this particular one. Dr. Osoro, before we get back to the president of NAD in Abuja Teaching Hospital, one will wonder what could be the driver for targeting or the intent for literally targeting healthcare professionals. Remember, we've had the Jakba incident. We're even looking for more doctors, and now the ones we have are not even safe at home. What is going on, if you can explain to us?
I think we need to realize that it doesn't appear as if the medical personnel are just being targeted. That is very doubtful. For instance, the issue of the medical students, and these criminals, they get on the highways, and it's an opportunistic kind of a thing. They pick anyone they see, they pick on any vehicle. Some you hear cases where vehicles are fired upon. But you know, the thing is, because of the maybe profession of the people involved, you know, and it comes on. But I mean, this is something that is happening practically every time. So I don't think that they will say that the medical people are just being targeted. It's a national problem.
Dr. Osoro, is that an assumption or a statement of fact? Because what you're saying...
It's a statement of fact. Because like I said, it's just because now because medical people are involved and they have a very strong association, I mean, there are people can rally around and then, of course, bring it to the media. But this is something that you hear it last week, the other week, you heard people traveling between Kogi State and KT, and you're hearing it practically every time. Commercial buses being being attacked and all that. So I don't think we will say that these criminals that come out from the bush and they just, they pick anyone they see.
All right, Doctor. So I'll get back to Dr. Innocent, but just one more on this, because that's why I was asking you whether it's a statement of fact or an assumption. Because some school of thought are saying that because of the number of doctors we have and the need for medical professionals and all the things that are going on, some of these elements are targeting doctors, carefully using those words, to maybe gain some level of service from their expertise. These doctors are innocent; they are just doing their business, but they are being targeted because maybe they are taken to treat maybe there are some of the people in their camps and all of that. What do you say to that?
Like I said, maybe after the victims are taken into their fortresses, that may happen. But we shouldn't, talk about targeting on the highways. No, because these are things that is happening, like I've said, happening on a regular basis. It's a national issue, and you've heard students, you've heard coppers, you've heard traders, you've heard just travelers, people going for weddings. So it's not that maybe. In this case, these are students. And I don't think one would say the doctor.
All right, Dr. Osoro, let's take it back to Dr. Innocent. Dr. Innocent, do you agree with the Dr. Osoro on this particular one? He said there's nothing like doctors specifically being targeted. That you're just a victim of the general crisis everybody's dealing with. Is that how you see this from where you sit? Okay, maybe Kayode, I'm sure you have a question.
Yeah, while we're trying to resolve all of that, because they're a major part of this conversation as well for Dr. The NARD doctor in our Abuja studio. It's important to get his thoughts on that. That's Dr. Innocent, as well as Mr. Wilson Inalego from the security perspective. But let me come back to you, Dr. Osoro. And this is a premise. We've had a doctor who's been in captivity for 7 months. We'll get Dr. Innocent to speak to that. For 7 months. And you wonder, what is the thinking behind that? And this is not the first. Now we've had medical students kidnapped as well. And what has been said to be a cause of this is that some of these bandits, terrorists, criminals need medical help in their camps because their members go out there, get injured, and they need someone to give them prescriptions, tend to them. So that's also been some sort of explanation for why we're seeing this uptick in kidnappings of medical practitioners, and in this case, students. So what have you to say to that, Dr. Osoro?
Like I've said, I want us to put it in the right perspective. Yes, maybe the doctors who are taken into captivity may help this set of criminals offering medical help. But there are also several other people. If you remember, the core members that were traveling from Akwa Ibom going to Sokoto, and they were taken in, I think up till now, running into months also, many of them are still not being released. So what I want us to look at is that these are people who get on our highways and attack most times they go for these buses because of the number of people these buses carry. So, and there are other people too. They've taken business people. It's a very sad situation. But I don't think, for instance, the one that happened last week in Benue State, that one could say, oh, the doctors were just being targeted. I think this opportunistic attacks that they just came out on the highway, and then they feel that they can take into bus loot of people, because this is a case of kidnapping for ransom. So I would not think that medical people in this instance are particularly targeted.
Well, again, we'll get Dr. Innocent to speak to that, but it's important to properly contextualize it. I don't know if we can get Dr. Innocent in now, but while that is being sorted, it's important to properly contextualize this. While we understand that there's a general insecurity in some areas, by the way, which is worrisome, I should say. But we're seeing this trend, so we want to properly put it in context, explain it, so we know what we're dealing with here. Because for a long time, it appears as though we didn't quite know what we were dealing with. Are they bandits? Are they terrorists? Are they opportunists? Are they, secessionists and all of that? It's been tough to really define them. So you wouldn't blame people, Dr. Osoro, if they, explain things the way they see them. And it takes me to my next question, which is in terms of ensuring that, first, these people are arrested, they're prosecuted, and people get some sort of closure to the cases. There are lots of unresolved kidnap cases in the country. The people are rescued or released, and we hear nothing about those who kidnapped them. You don't have this in other crimes. They always say that one thing you can vouch for some authorities for is that they will get those terrorists or criminals one way or the other. But has that been the case here, Dr. Osoro?
Sadly, I think that's the dilemma that we're really facing, because I keep on thinking that if we want to get our economy back, we're talking about food security, we're talking about our high cost of foodstuff and all that. The number one thing that government really needs to handle is this general insecurity. And I don't think we're doing enough. That's the truth. Sometimes you hear an election in a state, you'll hear maybe the police say, oh, they are deploying 20,000 people. The Nigerian Security and Civil Defense also, they are deploying a number of thousands. Even road safety will even join. And you begin to wonder the space that these criminals are occupying. Why can't we declare a state of emergency? Mobilize the same way we mobilize our security people to go, manage elections that are mostly, people full of complaints and legal tussles and all that. Why can't we take maybe 6 months, 1 year? Let's face this general insecurity.
Right.
Do something about it. And then you just discover that, for instance, you come to the north, maybe in a place like Plateau, that everywhere you can plant anything and you make a good harvest. Are people really going to their farms? These are the issue.
All right.
In Benue State, you hear, that's what I'm saying. You hear this Gato area attacked, after that again attacked, and you're having people in state capitals who are in IDPs.
Well, Dr. Osoro, I'd like to pause you for a moment. Pardon me. We now have Dr. Innocent and Mr. Enalegu from our Abuja studio with us. So, Dr. Innocent, quite a lot on your table. First, to land on the thought you were making about the incidents you've recorded so far, and then you might want to respond to some of the points raised by Dr. Osoro. Dr. Innocent, over to you now.
Thank you very much. Like I said earlier, I don't quite agree with the assertion of Dr. Osoro concerning that doctors are targeted. Now, this is a rising cause for concern because we are beginning to notice a lot of incidents of kidnapping, particularly on health workers and then specifically on doctors. We have all of the statistics. A lot of our members are currently in captivity, and some of the reasons, and we've had cause to interact with those that were released. So we have this very conviction that the attacks are beginning to be targeted on doctors. Number one, doctors are perceived to be rich. So that's one of the reasons that we're beginning to see this attack on doctors. These kidnappers, they believe that doctors are rich, and it's a wrong assertion. Then secondly, they also believe that doctors will be able to mass mobilize in terms of raising resources to be able to pay for ransom for their colleagues, considering the associations that we belong to. Again, this is a wrong assertion. Then some of our colleagues that currently been released, we've also had cause to interact with them. And you will observe that these kidnappers, they also use our colleagues in their camp, to attend to their colleagues, their mercenaries that are wounded, and then to provide healthcare services even in their camp. So these are some of the reasons that we're beginning to notice and witness rising cases of kidnap among doctors. Now, for instance, a renowned professor of neurology, Professor Ekanem of the University of Calabar, was kidnapped. Today makes it exactly 1 year. She was kidnapped in her clinic while offering services to her patients. This was precisely in July 13, 2023. We've followed up a lot of raising concern and awareness. Till today, we really can't talk about her whereabouts. We had a case where Dr. Macpherson Sampson was also kidnapped along the airport road in Abuja. He was in his clinic and then he stepped out to get something and then he was picked up. Then currently we have a case of Dr. Ganiat Pupola, who was also kidnapped. Today makes it exactly 7 months, 23 days in detention. She was kidnapped in a federal government quarters in Kaduna. She's a resident in a national eye care center, and she was kidnapped alongside her husband and her nephew. And then, interestingly, her husband was released. Why was the doctor not released? And then we also noticed that our colleagues that are kidnapped, it takes a very long time before they are released, even when ransoms are paid. So that means there must be a reason why they are held back in some of these camps. And this has always been our advocacy to government and health personnel, because security personnel, because we currently have a lot of pressure on healthcare system in Nigeria with deteriorating healthcare system. And so before now, we were battling with the Japa syndrome of doctors traveling abroad to seek for better remuneration, better welfare, better security. But now we currently have this issue of rising kidnapping on doctors. And it's going to put a lot more pressure on the healthcare system. No doctor will currently want to go to the primary healthcare center. This is where rural dwellers have access to healthcare. Incidentally, it is the den of kidnappers. Once you are working in the primary healthcare system, the secondary healthcare system, you get kidnapped. Whatever remuneration that we're talking about, you pay huge sums of money for ransom. Now, the current issue of the kidnapping of the 20 medical students. Again, this case was reported. It happened Thursday, the 15th day of August, 2023. It was reported, and up till now we read in the news where government, the IGP said security personnel, helicopters, and drone have been mobilized to the rescue of, we are talking about 20 potential doctors that have been in captivity for the past 4 days. Now, if these people graduate to become doctors, do you think they want to walk in the shores of this country? Do you think that we have confidence to be able to discharge their duty? Do you think we that are doctors that are currently working, any doctor you see in Nigeria currently is out of passion and patriotism? Because what we get, what we hear in terms of reward, security, social welfare, opportunities for professional retraining for our counterpart abroad. So for any health personnel to be in the country, Nigeria, it is out of sheer patriotism. So if you notice all of these kind of situations, it makes us lose confidence to be able to stay back. It makes us lose confidence to be able to attend to our patient. You are attending to your patient, you have concern, you have fear. It shouldn't be. Now, let me go back to the 20 medical students that were kidnapped. Incidentally, this happened in my community in Benue State. I am from Benue State, and you know, government makes a lot of assertion that you really can't lay your hand on. We have not seen any drone. We've not seen helicopter. This should be palpable. This should be physical. The effort should be very obvious. But we've not seen any of this effort. And our clamoring and advocacy has always been immediate response to these issues. Because the longer you wait, the more complicated it becomes. So these are the awareness that we've been creating. Take, for instance, Dr. Kutpola that is in detention. She's beginning to have worsening medical condition. We have evidence of life from her because she communicated with the family recently. And this was a case that was reported far back to the Kaduna State government, reported to relevant security personnel.
Right.
We had to embark on synergistic effort in all the centers in Nigeria to be able to create awareness. So we are calling on government to rise up to the task of providing security, not just to medical personnel, but to the entirety of the citizenry.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
Indeed, Dr. Jonathan. Let me go to Mr. Nelego. I know you have lots to say about this, but taking the case of Dr. Ganiat Kutpola, almost 8 months in captivity. Dr. Jonathan says there's proof of life. She's been communicating with family. But when you think about it, 8 months, this is definitely an exception. Yes, some may say that the one about the medical students was opportunist, but the fact is that they have been kidnapped. And these are the core of, our healthcare system. So what may we be missing? Plus your, initial thoughts on this, Mr. Nelego.
Yeah, I would have loved to react to the first question you posed.
Let's go ahead.
Regarding the targeting of medical doctors. I want to align with your other guests that it may not be totally correct to say that medical personnel or doctors are being targeted from the circumstances. The kidnappers carry out surveillance, and they must see the kidnap potential. And what is your kidnap potential? That you may have money. So it doesn't matter whether you're a medical doctor, but within your community, if you are found to be the rich guy, you could be a potential for kidnap. And so such people are usually advised to be aware that they could be kidnapped and take measures to protect themselves. Now, another thing that we need to talk about is some of these kidnaps are opportunistic, like you correctly stated, like the one that happened in Benue State. Now, there are things you have to look for. When kidnap happen along the highway, you've got to talk about the terrain. Are they hilly areas? Are they bushy areas? And if you look at data that you collect on kidnap along highways, those places are usually hilly places, and they are areas that are usually prone to kidnap incidents. And so usually the local police would advise residents and travelers that when you travel in this part of the road, security is a little bit difficult in those locations. So kidnap potential and terrain play critical role. And don't forget, we're in the rainy season. Most of the roads are covered with tall shrubs and grasses. And so even the shoulders of the road, most places are taken over. So it is easy for these vicious criminals to emerge from the bush and launch a surprise attack on unsuspecting motorists that ply the highway. So that happens. Now, when kidnap occur, of course, there is a protocol for response, like that happened in Benue. Clearly from what has taken place, they have kidnapped 20 medical students. They are demanding for 15 million. You know that these guys are local. They are within that area. They are not that sophisticated. Otherwise, the first demand they will make will not be that figure. And so you've got to begin to look inwards. And that is why you come to the community. You come to synergy among security agencies. cooperation and collaboration with the community. Every community have their bad guys. Every community and people in those communities know who are the good guys. And these are the only ways you'll be able to deal with the issues of kidnap. Like that lady who has been in detention. It's also about collaboration between the security agencies and the communication companies, the service providers. Because I believe that once you're able to make a phone call, that wherever with the collaboration and cooperation of service providers and with technology and human intelligence within those locations, it should be possible to bust into this. And I think these are areas that security agencies need to get more personnel and then to upscale their upscale in those areas. So once you are able to make a phone call, you have given an important clue, an important lead that the security agencies are working on. And I believe that that doctor that has spent so many months, 7 months, certainly I believe that cannot be in the bush, even though they'll be moving the victim from one point to the other. When they make a phone call at a location, they can also do a conference call with the leader of the kidnap gang. So even when you track to that individual, you may not get. But I believe that these crimes are solvable with technology, with collaboration and cooperation among security agencies, with technology.
Just as you continue to profile solution, because you're the security expert here, I would like you to suggest to the doctors, because at some point, what we've experienced with the Nigerian state, unfortunately, sad to say this, is that people eventually get to try to solve their own problem. Provide your own security, provide your own water, provide your own electricity at some level, and all of that. Now, while they are trying to wait for the big brother, which is the Nigerian state, to protect them, what can they do in the interim to protect themselves? As you can hear from the doctor, he said they're even worried, even in medical facilities.
Now, in terms, that's why I say, when you realize your kidnap potential, you have to be kidnap aware. And when you are kidnap aware, you take certain measures. For example, areas you normally go frequently, you've got to be, you've got to keep your movement private. If you follow one route at a particular time, you can expose yourself because your routine can be predicted. So you avoid predictability of your movement. Number two, be very careful whom you share your transaction and your movement with. Sometimes we get so relaxed that we begin to communicate in places that we shouldn't communicate. And then somebody gets to know, that this doctor or this individual has just received arrears for 6 months, for example. It means a person has money. So, but what we're trying to do, even within your household, you must be careful with those that work with you, those that work with you in the hospital. You don't have to be a doctor. Wherever you are, what it causes that communication must be of important activities of your life must be kept private. If you do that, you limit the risk of kidnap. Now, then you have to have access control. If you are working in a hospital, for example, even if patients are brought on emergency, there should be proper documentation. But ordinarily, assuming you are running a private hospital, we should be able to screen guests that come in, have registers, people to record. And the simple thing you can do within that medical facility, you can have few cameras, might be one in the approach, one in the general area, not more than 2, 3, and that will not cost you very much. So if you have camera, it will act as a deterrence and it will assist in investigation. And also, you've got to liaise with the local police to tell you what is the crime trend, because the local police will be able to tell you, the DPO will be able to tell you these are the crime trends and these are the issues. And you've got to have the telephone numbers that you can call, because response is important. Usually when when your location is, you discuss with the DPO in confidence, and you can call them when things happen. They are able to respond, and the kidnappers will normally not want where it will be difficult to pick the individual. So when you have a proper access control in your facility, you are able to ask a kind of delay, and you deter them. When they see that you have camera, they won't even come. Yeah.
It's analogous. Let's take it to Dr. Osoro. Dr. Osoro, we would like your intervention as well, both for the doctors and the hospital environments, especially, and places where these doctors live, because the doctor in the studio, in Abuja studio, Dr. Innocent, has clearly disagreed with you. He says because they are seen as high value, they see them as rich, the economic heritage, they can mass mobilize, they can provide healthcare services, and the long term of keeping them in the abductors' nests, then rather is a clear case that they are being targeted. But going beyond that, what can they do differently, especially where they work, as well as what the Nigerian state can do to change this perception that doctors are being targeted?
Let me add that my sympathies go to the families of the doctors that are in this kind of situation, and also all other Nigerians. And there are many. There are quite a lot of people. And so, but what I just want us to know is that religious leaders have been kidnapped, lawyers have been kidnapped, bankers have been kidnapped, and all kind of. It's just because I'm a security man, and so there are things I take notice of, So I can say this, in clear terms. It may not be. You can talk about somebody standing on the highway to target maybe a set of medical doctors. Well, I didn't even know that they are doctors. No, but I think generally, like I said.
My apologies. I wanted to say that he mentioned that people were even being kidnapped inside medical facility. He mentioned that.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. The problem that we have, I did say that, sometimes during one small election, you hear so thousands of policemen are being prepared for this election. So number of even the army, so all that kind of a thing. Honestly, the situation is a dire one. What advice we won't give in the past? I can speak to you some safety tips. But what safety tips will I give you that you won't go on the highway, not in the night? Of course, night journey is out of it. But we're talking about in the daytime, sometimes in the afternoon. I know someone who was traveling around that same Benue area about in the afternoon. And these guys just came out on the bush and started, scattering, shooting into their vehicle. So, you can't say that if you in the hospital, can security be provided in every health facility? It's going to be difficult. So, but what I think that we could do at the moment is endlessly, and this may be awkward, is for one to try to reduce most of the travels endlessly.
All right.
Most of the travels. That's just on travel, maybe on traveling. And then, of course, the...
All right, Dr. Osoro. Yes. We must thank you because of time. Thank you so much for your thoughts. But it's just unfortunate that we have to look for creative ways to move around and to live instead of living free in a democracy. That calls to question the ability of the state to protect all of us. And I'm sure they have responses. I must thank you, Dr. Edwin Osoro, Security and Management Consultant, Fellow, the Security Institute, United Kingdom, and founding MD CEO of Executive Guards Limited, as well as Mr. Wilson Inalego, retired Assistant Inspector General of Police from Abuja studio, as well as Dr. Abba Innocent, President, Association of Resident Doctors, University of Abuja Teaching Hospital. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on the program.